and discuss the issue of climate change, I'm joined live from the Masai Mara in Kenya by Dr. Bharat Pankhania, who's a senior clinical lecturer based in Bath, England. Dr. Pankhania, thank you so much for joining us today here on aNews. I know it's winter in Kenya. It's summer back home for you in England. I'm sure you're not worried about the plants in your garden getting watered adequately, but around Europe, around the world, we're seeing a global heat crisis. What can you tell us about the importance of this and the consequences for Earth?
So we live on extremely fragile planet Earth. And I've been reflecting whilst I've been visiting my other home, which is Kenya, and here I am in the Masai Mara. And our ecological systems are extremely delicate. And without a shadow of doubt, we have global warming caused by the release of excess amounts of carbon dioxide further to ourselves within the last 150 years or so, burning that carbon that was locked up in fossil fuels, petroleum, methane gas, and coal. So this is the consequence of releasing a lot of carbon dioxide in a short time.
What are the effects on people, on communities? Obviously there are several communities that are at extreme risk here. Who are they?
So we're all at risk. The whole of planet Earth is at risk. There is no way anyone can say, I'm okay, I don't need to worry about it. So let me give you an example. We have crops that are grown in one part of the world that are eaten in another part of the world. And with soaring temperatures, plants stop making food, or they also stop incorporating important minerals. So you may get food, but it will be of substandard subcategories, meaning lacking in essential nutrients and minerals. So, and you can have total crop failures as well. In addition to that, it is climate change. What we mean by climate change is not necessarily heating only. In some parts of the world, they will get a lot drier. Some parts of the world will get a lot wetter. Some parts of the world may experience a change in, for example, the Gulf Stream that applies to the United Kingdom. So if the Gulf Stream were to permanently change direction, the United Kingdom would be as cold as Nova Scotia in Canada is. And that would be unprecedented because suddenly you would have severe cold in a place that is usually quite warm.
Right, and a moderate temperate climate can go to the worst. Now, obviously, normally we're talking to you in your capacity as a medical doctor, and you've given us great support and advice about the COVID pandemic. But this climate change issue has severe health implications as well. I imagine not treatable in the way that a pandemic was, but is it like another pandemic, do you see?
Well, it definitely is a problem to come. And the problem is multifactorial. So from an infectious disease point of view, there are problems of climate change, whereby, for example, let us take Northern Europe, where I live. It's usually a cool place. Therefore, those mosquitoes that carry malaria, dengue fever, Zika virus are not present at the moment. But that is not to say that if we have continuous warm winters, that these mosquitoes will not establish themselves, and therefore you will have the emergence of malaria and other insect-borne infections in a country which never had them before.
So, in fact, the problem of migration isn't just limited to the human effects of migration, and the many people that have been displaced, many millions of people who have been displaced, and we've had news about that earlier in this bulletin. But it's also a migration of other living things.
Indeed, there is. So we've got fish that have to move to cooler waters. And we've also had a lot of fish die back in the Atlantic on the Texan coast because the water got so warm that the fish didn't have enough oxygen to breathe, and therefore they all died. So yes, there are migrations not only of humans, which will inevitably happen, but animals, birds, trees, and other species, including aquatic life, which will have to move to where they can live. But if there is nowhere to live or they cannot move, they will die off.
Now, what you're telling us is actually very helpful to understand the situation, because most people, when they hear of climate change, they also associate with the word global warming, and warming they're expecting to see hot weather. Now, we've seen in the United Kingdom that hasn't been the case this past month, a tremendous amount of rain. But the people responsible for helping to guide us away from this coming tragedy are of course our politicians. Are they doing enough to prevent a future catastrophe?
No, of course not, Andy. And I say that emphatically because the politicians are elected for their political cycle 4 to 5 years, and they have to pursue those populist policies that keep them in power and keep them from getting re-elected. Whereas what is important and a decent moral thing to do for politicians is to be honest and to say honestly, we cannot carry on burning fossil fuels. We have Prime Minister Rishi Sunak from the United Kingdom talking absolute nonsense when he says we are going to extract more oil from the North Sea. My reasons are that North Sea oil isn't coming to the UK because it is sold on the global market. So whatever the price of crude oil on the global market is the price that the UK pays. And just to keep on extracting rather than investing in renewables is morally absolutely wrong. And we have those politicians all over the world. We've had President Trump in the United States. We've had
We appear to have lost the connection with Dr. Pankhania. The distance from here to Kenya and the middle of the Masai Mara, sometimes it is very difficult to keep the connection going. But some very important information there about the terrible consequences of climate change, and as Dr. Pankhania was just explaining to us, the role that politicians should be playing to help protect us from future catastrophes.